Hi, thank you for calling. It's a creator's world. We're just living in it.
Press 10,000.
I'm Nick Benson, founder and CEO of Atelier, a product platform for creators.
And I'm Rowi Singh, beauty creative. We're here to spill the tea on the creator economy and deep dive into the next evolution of the creator lifecycle.
What have you been reading? You've been reading creator economy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was reading about the creator economy, which isn't a new concept. It's just something that developed around like the 2008, 2010 mark, but has slowly been building on itself. And I've just been reading about the evolution of just the creator and how it started off as like bloggers and like WordPress bloggers, and then that sort of evolved into influencers, and then influencers are now, that's sort of a dying concept because of influencer fatigue, and it's moved into creators. And I guess the creator economy is essentially social media and people like monetizing their ability to entertain,
right?
And how it's moved away just from like traditional media, and it's really like in the hands of like the everyday person, and that's where people are flocking for their entertainment. So on like after work, I'll scroll through TikTok, like rather than sitting down in front of the TV, or I'll do both, but sometimes at the same time.
Yeah, 2 screens, 3 screens with the watch as well.
Laptop,
TikTok on the watch.
emails, TikTok,
Right.
TV.
Right.
Yeah. So I've just been reading about how it's really in the hands of the creator, and people are either running with their entertainment and running with that full steam ahead, Charlie D'Amelio style, or they are monetizing or picking up on their craft and turning that into a fully fledged business.
Is this the best time in history for a creator to effectively be the master of their own domain or monetize, what they do? Like if I think about, say like artists, hundreds of years ago, you take composers, like no one was really monetizing their work effectively, right? Like it is all like posthumous wealth that is generated. And then throughout, if you look at the music industry, maybe in the 80s and the 90s, it's like the artists, like some artists, I think the music industry in general, like some artists were obviously crushing it. They'll always be that like top 1%, but having that filter down to like essentially the like folk creators who are the ones at home, just like, with their hands and an idea. It's like the democratization of, I think it started like democratization of tools and then the ability to build community around the thing that you create. So the democratization of the ownership of community, because like previously the community was owned by whoever was distributing the work.
Exactly.
And the creator just created the thing and then gave it to someone who produced it, like essentially mass produced it, distributed it, and then they captured all the value, even though the creator is creating most of that value.
It was almost in reverse, where you had your talent and you had your craft and you just didn't know how to get it out there, and you had to form connections like the old school way. Whereas now I feel like people jump onto a platform and then figure out the craft afterwards.
Right.
It's like people's skill nowadays is being able to talk to a mass audience, and then it sort of evolves from there. I know a lot of people sort of work in reverse. But I feel like right now, essentially, it's the creator's world and we're just living in it massively.
I think that's right. And literally, we are living in multiple creator communities all day, every day. We were talking earlier about kind of a shift in like stand-up comedy where, in, say, the 90s, you would get one of the best comedians in the world, Jerry Seinfeld, and the pinnacle for him is he gets offered a show. And, he, like, makes tons of money off it. But he doesn't own that community. Like NBC owns the network and then they own the show and he creates it and they are the gatekeepers of, what gets put to that community, really. And then, Jerry understands his popularity through some abstracted like ratings values or something like that. But now you can get a stand-up, create a podcast, put it live, build the community, communicate, like own that community, be a part of it, be in it and of it. Like, I think that's super, super interesting.
It's built from the ground up. I mean, that's how I started it. It was no knowledge whatsoever. It was just delving into something that I found remotely passionate. Let's delving into something that I was remotely passionate about, and then building and crafting that skill over a certain period of time,
Right.
Until I finally had a hold on a community, or I finally had an understanding of who my audience was and like who I was speaking to. And it's funny, like I started this in uni and it was all fun and games, and I was just kind of doing makeup casually and putting on the internet because I'd create these looks, and you know, I got a good response from it, but I had no idea where it was going to go, and I didn't really believe that this was going to be a business at all. It was all, I don't know, I feel like you're just trained into thinking that creating content like on the internet won't be a real job. Like that was back in like the 2012 mark. I was like, this can't be a real job. I've been told my whole life, like all through school, that like there's like 5 options for a career. And so I took that and just did it for myself until I realized that I was speaking to a lot of people and I wanted to do more with it. And I wanted to capitalize on my, I guess, like the voice that I had created in as like a South Asian woman creating makeup and expressing herself and like diverting away from like traditional career routes. And yeah, it's sort of like an evolving, it's like it's evolved from a passion project to a fully fledged like business and audience that I'm talking to. And I feel like you learn on the go. Like back in the days, like you had your craft and that was what you had, and you had people, like you were saying, producers to help bring it to life. But the whole time it's just you trying to bring this to life and learning. And, you know, it feels very closed off sometimes as a creator because you can't really lean on other people. And so you're just taught to do it yourself all the way through. And I feel like that's why it feels so close-knit. That's why we feel like we're closer to our audience, because it's just us and 300,000 people.
Right. And I think this is better. It's better that you have that toolkit to understand not just your craft, but the distribution strategies for that craft, and then the communication tools that you have to communicate with that audience that forms around it. Like I think traditionally brands have been monologues, right? It's like I'm a brand and I have a voice and I will speak at people and some people will listen, and that cut it up until we had social tools where people could start to communicate back. And it honestly started with reviews, like online reviews. Was all of a sudden people were getting feedback on products, and it's like, oh wow, you know, it's like
I got to listen to this.
Right. Like it's funny because in obviously like 60s, 70s, 80s, they did focus groups, which is like now widely considered you just don't do focus groups because it's just not how people shop, right? Like the joke is that they're never focused and rarely in groups. So it's like, you know, this is not mimicking some real life scenario. It's just asking people for an opinion. And if you ask anyone for an opinion, you are going to get an opinion, you know, whether or not they've got skin in the game or interested or not. But now all of a sudden a brand is a conversation. And that it's really interesting. It's really kind of destabilized the, I guess, the world of, let's say, organizations, because if you think about like a religion as a brand, or a sports team as a brand, or a government as a brand, it's like an idea and a group of people ritualizing around the idea, you know, a community. I think that those institutions don't know how to handle the level of back and forth communication that exists right now. But someone like you, Rowi, who've just come up and this is your native state, like it's the natural state to be. And it's also interesting because it's the state that mimics like real world relationships, right? It's like I've got a friend and I can have a conversation with that friend, and that friend will give me feedback straight away on who I am and how I am, and, you know, I'll course correct. Like that's how brands need to operate now, and creators are perfectly suited to navigate that world way more than like institutional brands or anything like that.
It's just intimate. It's just even just thinking about the concept of DMs, it's direct communication with a follower from anywhere in the world. You're hearing it straight from the horse's mouth. And I think with brands, it filters down. You have someone feeding back into what, like a social media manager who's feeding into like a direct manager to the brand manager to the CEO. It gets lost in communication. And I think it's hard to have that like ear to the ground when you've got sort of a massive brand that has built their whole mission on what they believe in rather than what a certain group of people believe in. So
Right.
yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because not everyone is going to respond in the way that I hope to respond to my audience. I mean, people can take it personally and people won't listen at all. So I feel like that's the distinction between influencer and creator. There's a massive distinction.
So we were talking about this before. It's like a really, I'm really excited to talk about this.
Yeah.
There's also a latency within brands for that communication. Like that string of communication takes time and you miss your opportunity to engage in that conversation, right? It's like having a conversation with a person and them asking you a question and then being like, let me get back to you.
Let me get back to you in 5 to 7 business days.
Yeah, exactly. Where is the, just like the organic flow of relationship building, right? Because ultimately that's what it is. Like you could have a relationship with a brand in the past. It was like not a great relationship, but now you have a choice of having a relationship with the brand or a relationship with a person that is a brand or creator that is a brand. And it's like, yeah, I'd probably take the one where I can DM the creator and they can DM me right back, straight away. Like what a great direct line. And it's so fucking exciting for an individual to be able to do that as well.
Oh, I remember the first time I messaged like a influencer like back in 2013. And I think this influencer had maybe like 200,000 followers and I was not an influencer at the time. So
Do you know who it was?
Oh God. Some UK influencer who now I look back, I'm like, cool. That's funny. I can't even remember the name. Her name's Sarah something. But she's kind of like a UK fast fashion influencer. And I had messaged her being like, oh, I love your jeans. Where'd you get them from? And she responded. I was like, oh my God, she responded back to me. I didn't think that was going to happen. Like that little moment of excitement where you're like, wow, okay, a communication has formed with someone of authority that I didn't think was going to happen.
Right.
And then I started watching her content a little bit more because she had that response with me. And so suddenly I was interested a little bit more. Someone paid attention to me, I guess. And I was like, oh, people are listening, responding back to me.
Yeah.
I want to find out a bit more about like what they're doing and what they have to say. Yeah. That's how I guess it started. Yeah. It was interesting.
Yeah. So like creator influencer definition, right? So interesting. Like
they overlap, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, okay. Give us the definition. Because people would call you both. Like someone would say you're an influencer and someone would say you're a creator.
Yes. It's so funny when someone calls me an influencer, I'm like, oh, like I don't want to hear that.
Right, which I think every influencer doesn't want to be called an influencer.
It's just a bit overused, and I think it just has so many negative connotations because I think the way it's presented in the media as just like someone who's self-serving and just a personality, and there's nothing there, and they just got famous from their looks or something rather. But I feel like an influencer has the power to influence people's like purchasing habits and beyond. But I think with a creator, it's more focused on their craft and they're influencing through a craft, through a passion project, through something that is driving them to stay on the platform in the first place. So they're sort of not just existing and showcasing their whole life on the internet, where some people are.
Right.
I think creators more have like, they're a makeup artist or they are a textiles designer or they dabble in home decor and they are putting that content out and people are starting to tune in because they align with the same interests. And they 100% have like overlaps because some massive influencers have, a fashion brand, but what came first?
Right. Well, I feel like there's also this cringe thing, right, of like like an influencer calling themselves an influencer, like it's the first thing you see in their Instagram bio. I'm an influencer.
Or like public figure.
Right.
You're like, oh.
Right. When they're, I don't know, like a political fanatic calling themselves an influencer, or I think if you're claiming it, then maybe there's like some, I don't know, you kind of miss the point of what it is, right?
100%.
It's like, oh, well, like, yeah, cool, you've got, 800,000 followers, but really it's like if you look at the audience, it's like what purchasing can you drive? You could sell. If you look at your audience and it's not related to who you are as a person, it's not the conversation that you are trying to have as a creator. You're not embedded in that community. You are like an entertainer for that community, but it's not, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it's the same relationship with the community.
It's just a numbers game in the end. Like, I think that's when the influencer industry started to quote unquote die off, or we started to get influencer fatigue, because people were just chasing numbers,
right,
no matter what. So they were buying followers, they were like shamelessly self-promoting themselves on whatever platform, and it became more about collecting numbers or trying to reach a certain number, and that's what brands were looking to at one point. 100%. They were like, 1 million followers, amazing.
Yes.
Wow, that must get us X return, until it didn't.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting as well, because, you know, I think there's probably a difference in motivation as well. Like, maybe we can say that like an influencer is chasing the brand partnership. Like, they exist to form the brand partnership, to get the clothes, to get the, you know, endorsement deal, to get the money for the post. Whereas, like, I get the impression that most creators would be creating, you know, no matter what audience they had around them. And they're not looking for those things necessarily. Not that it's a dirty thing to look for them, but it's like, well, I'm here, I'm creating something, and it just happens to, you know, like, tap into the zeitgeist, or it happens to be a part of a relevant conversation. And I think that's also when you start to see communities really expand quickly, right? It's like every now and then you see something and you're like, you know, for me, and this is where I will just like feel really old and out of touch, and I'll be like, you know, see a community explode around a particular person or whatever, and I'll be like, wow, I really don't understand.
I don't get it.
I'm not a part of that community at all. Like, how does that community form?
Which is so interesting. I think that's where it comes back to the creators economy, because there are so many different pockets, different little communities that we won't understand. Like that YouTuber who's like a 9-year-old kid, like Ryan, and he just reviews toys, and he has like 26 million subscribers. Like, so cute. But I mean, amazing. Not for me, but I think that's the whole economy of it all.
Well, the internet supports niches. Like, that's like this fundamental thing that if you want, like, you want to trace it back right to the start of the technology that allows everything, like this podcast, like everything, you know, we do to exist, is like the internet allows, it removes geography from the equation. And so, you know, you always like, it's interesting to like bring it back down, I guess, to just human behavior and psychology. It's like, it's your first day of uni and you're all of a sudden not with your school friends. You don't have the people around you that you're used to, and you look up and you're looking for people within your geography who look like you, who sound like you, and you form like your subculture. But like geography drove that, and you would go to a location, you know, an event that like-minded people would be at, just to find your in-group, just to be a part of that. But now you have dispersed, decentralized in-groups where you can get on, you know, a subreddit for whatever weird niche you want, and be in a community of millions of people who are all having a conversation about the same thing. I think the really interesting thing, like, out of that that like online generation of community is still the need to be with people. And so like you see that with, you know, hype-beast culture, or, you know, you see that with people lining up for the new iPhone or a new piece of tech or new sneaker. It's like, okay, this is a community that is always online and they never congregate. And then all of a sudden, you know, you walk past a, you know, like Sneaker Boy or whatever, and there's a line out front, and it's like 10 o'clock at night and they're lining up till the next day. And it's not to get the sneaker. Like, the sneaker is important, but the community is more important. It's to be around each other, to be a part of the in-group. You know, I think it's just super interesting that like our human behavior just like mimics itself everywhere.
I've definitely, like, I was in LA and people were lining up outside the Supreme store, and I just joined the line. I was like, what's happening here? Like, I just wanted to know what was happening. And like, I think that's how it works. It creates hype around like a certain niche, and once it becomes, I don't know, like once it comes offline, once it's in store, it's just so much more exciting, because it's less, I don't know, it's less tangible when it's just, you know, in these little internet communities, but then it's there, and you feel like you're a part of something. Yeah.
And what were you lining up for? Like a Supreme branded hockey stick?
No, nothing. It actually was nothing. It was just like the latest drop that they had, and everything was overpriced, and like, like I get it, but I don't get it. But like, so I got there, I was like, okay. Just walk straight out. But that community in particular, so people would go in and purchase things, and then they would come straight out, and there'd be someone standing next to them, and they'd resell it for like double or triple the price. So that's that community that they've created, and then they'll keep flocking to,
Right.
because it actually serves them a purpose, and there's an incentive there. So yeah.
I'm curious. I was thinking about this as we were kind of preparing for this podcast. Like, how a part of your community do you feel?
I feel like I'm at the center of it, but there are times, so I feel like there are times where I feel it wavering. So if I'm not online enough, or if I haven't posted a couple of stories, or I haven't posted in a while, I feel like a disconnect, because I'm not physically there. I'm not physically there in people's stories trays. I'm not there in the feed. So I do need to keep up like my content in order to have that conversation. So I think it's funny, because I could talk about a beauty product and I'll have a bit of engagement, but then I could talk about something I was mentioning to you, something so light and silly as in like a random poll about like, would you rather have no lashes or no brows? And people
Check
just
in though.
flock.
What's the answer?
The answer was
No, what's your answer?
Oh, my answer.
Yeah.
Would I would rather have no brows. Lashes protect you from dirt and other
It's
things.
pure. It's a functional thing.
And also
you're all about the all function on this one.
No, it's for fashion too. Like, you could shave in my eyebrows, and I'm like, yes, let's do it.
Well, it was a look, right?
It's a look.
Yeah,
it's a whole
yeah,
look.
yeah.
But people get heated about that discussion, and it was interesting. And
you could just get fake moustaches and put.
Oh, exactly. You could stick on anything. You could create like a jeweled brow. Why not?
Right.
I know.
Rowi Singh.
Rowi Singh, TM. Copyright. So, and then it becomes less about me feeling like I need to have a voice. Like, oh God, I should probably talk about some of my like favorite concealers because I haven't done something beauty focused in a while. I don't feel that pressure. I can jump on and talk about anything and people will engage. And I think that'll just have a flow on effect. And then I've got more people conversing in my comment section and then people are listening. And so if I did want to speak to a particular beauty product, people are already there.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be these deep, intricate conversations that we are forcing to build with our audience, which sometimes that's what it feels like with brands. It's kind of like a forced conversation about their product that nobody wants to have. And that's where I sort of steer away from. I try to have those like loose conversations that can be about nothing, or they can be really politically heavy. Sure. And people will weigh in either way. And that's the community that I'm building, regardless of beauty.
Right. I assume you have like super users in your community.
Super
like,
fans.
Yeah. Super fans.
Super
Stans.
fans. Stans. Stan culture is culty.
Yeah.
It's scary. So I feel like I have people, I'll recognize those usernames that'll keep popping up. It's the same people. And I could go into one of my followers and we could scroll up and the conversation would just keep going because they'll keep responding to my stories and I'll respond back and we'll have like funny conversations with a complete stranger from like Brazil or like somewhere in the world. And those people that keep coming up and those usernames I recognize are 100% my super fans. It's weird to call it that, but I guess people that I'm, used to conversing with.
Right.
And those are the people when I drop something exciting or if I have an announcement, they're first in line.
Right.
They're like, oh my God, I'm so excited.
Yes.
Those are the people essentially that I'm speaking to because I read something online about you could have like 1,000, you don't need 1 million followers.
1,000 true fans.
1,000 true fans, yeah. So in the end, it's not about talking to a mass group of people. It's about creating those small little trivial or, heavy conversations with people that show up day in, day out.
And this is also something like talking about creators of the new brands that a brand can never have. They can never have the on a whim conversation.
Yeah, everything has to be proof. So you can't be like, oh, I'll just have like a casual conversation.
Right.
I think the only place that I have seen it and people have actually commented on the tone of voice is brands like Fenty Beauty, where their tone of voice is, it actually, sometimes it sounds like Rihanna's responding directly back to the audience. And I think that's what they like.
Right.
Because they have their idol and they feel like that's her brand. And even though it's like a whole team of brand managers, their tone of voice is so on point and so conversational and kind of funny at times, and they're memeing. It's like a brand that is memeing constantly.
Yes.
And people will comment on it and say, oh, best Insta account, like brand Insta account, like I love the way they respond.
Yeah.
And so then when I just did like a bit of like research, I was looking into one of like Fenty Beauty's most recent posts, and they're dropping a new product, and it was just beautiful like visuals of just sauce dripping, like different sauces, and they just said something's coming, and then the comments are just like, they're engaged. They're just, oh, I can't wait to see what this is. Like, take my money right now. I don't care what it is, but like, I need it. If it's Fenty Beauty, I have to have it. And so it has this flow-on effect that when they release a product, they're there.
Yeah. Well, I think there's an interesting moment, right, where like, I mean, because of the culture that we live in, this like culture of consumerism, like we represent ourselves through brands, right? And like, I'm not ashamed to say it, and I don't think it makes you any less.
Of course.
Like it's a real expression of who you are. Like I wear a specific, like I wear velvet sheen t-shirts and like Comme des Garçons pants, and like it forms a vision of myself that I'm proud to represent in the world.
Yeah, it's just a visual extension of your identity.
Right.
And I think that it's just a visual way of communicating.
Right.
So.
Which is really interesting when you have that deep relationship with the community, because you allow people to represent themselves through, say, like the Rowi Singh brand and form a part of their identity. I think it's really interesting. And there's, again, like it makes so much sense with this idea of creators of the new brands, because it's like, now it's not just some like piece of drip that I have that makes me feel a certain way. It's like this drip represents a relationship that I have with this person.
It's an experience. Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, when a brand is creating product, they are desperate to understand what that community wants and needs, you know. It's and they'll do whatever to try to understand. And it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of investment, and, you know, it's like out there trying to have conversations, whereas, you know, creators are so advantaged in that they are a part of their community.
And I think as well, we have the opportunity to, whilst we're responding and listening to our audience, it's almost on a subconscious level. We're not really like, it's not like I go onto my Instagram and I'm like, okay, what are people saying today? What are they telling me? Like, how am I going to use that for my
Except
brand?
for the eyebrows and the lashes.
Exactly that. I'm like, okay, got it. Shave off my eyebrows.
Yeah. Prosthetic eyebrows. Rowi Singh
done.
prosthetic
It's
eyebrows.
a look.
Yeah.
And I literally sat in the mirror being like, will this work? So it's just, you pick up on small things that people, so for example, if I'm using a product that I love and then people are like, okay, I used it, but it did this, like it was a bit too watery. How do I get this to last? How do I pull the pigment out? Suddenly you start to listen to where people, I guess not where people want improvements, but what questions people are having and how you can sort of subconsciously solve that yourself with whatever you want to produce. So, for example, like I've had people being like, you need to do a masterclass. Like you need to do, I want to learn from you. But then I've had other people being like, oh, masterclasses are so boring. Like you just sit there watching someone do their makeup, and then I try to do it myself and it's a disaster.
Yes.
So then listening to both aspects of that and then trying to cross it over and me trying to figure out how can I sort of create like a happy middle or sort of slot into a gap. I think that's the creator advantage, because especially in beauty, it is saturated.
Right.
It's heavily saturated.
Yeah.
And everyone is doing something. Like with niches, that's the beauty of the niche, because it kind of already exists. Like if you want something, it's already there and someone's going to already be doing it. But I think the creator advantage is that you're listening to a very like niche audience yourself, and you can kind of respond to that in a right way. And I feel like that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to see where the gaps are and what I can do to help my community.
Right. The masterclass is like one of those things where you might watch it and be like, wow, that's really interesting. I'm probably never going to do that though. You know, whereas like you can help them get part of the way there or engage with your brand in other ways by, maybe creating physical things for them. I think that it's harder to do, but I think that, I mean, like it's something that we try to do is kind of in the same way that YouTube or like Instagram has democratized the tools of creation. We are also trying to democratize the tool of creating products to make it easy for brands to go, okay, well, I don't have to do a masterclass right now. Like that's this democratized creator tool that I have access to. It's like, oh, okay, we can create you know, whatever we want now, like whatever physical product we want, I think is like, it's kind of interesting. Yeah. I mean, like, I think it's interesting in that where influencers just like really miss the mark.
Yeah.
Because then you talk about being tapped into your community, and I often wonder that, you know, where an influencer or a creator like drops a product, and it's like, well, you should know your community better than this. Like, you really should be tapped into this. Like, what happened here? Did someone encourage you to do this? Like, where is this decision-making process? I always laugh at decision-making processes for products that come to market, because it's like, wow, the amount of people that had to think about this. And okay, like, I think jelly babies are hilarious, because it's like they had to come up with like a new shape for a candy, and they were like, let's make one in the shape of babies. And it's like, okay, someone had the idea, but then someone had to pitch the idea, like, let's like a whole bag full of babies and you're going to eat them. And then someone had to sit across and be like, that is a great idea, you know? And then it went through like a full series of approvals, and then all of a sudden it's like someone made the mold of a little baby, and then they create these like little baby candy, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, jelly babies, no one questions it, but it's weird to have a candy in the shape of a baby, like bags and bags of babies, and everyone's eating them all the time, you know. But like, I always find that so interesting when someone releases a product and you're like, wow, the decision to get there, like,
it can work in an incredible way, but also in a really dangerous way, where someone will create a product and you're like, wow, that went through how many lines of like approvals?
Yes.
How did that get approved?
Right.
Or like, not even just a product, just a, I don't know, like a marketing campaign that's offensive or controversial. It's like not one person put their hand up and said, this might not be a good idea.
Right. Like with the Pepsi.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe not one person.
Yes.
And I think that just comes back to people weren't really listening. And it just was like a team of like higher ups that made these decisions. And I think, it just kind of kept going. But I think some people can listen to their audience and feel like they have a good grasp on the audience, and then create something and it misses the mark.
Right.
But that's fine. I think it's just like, it keeps going. It doesn't stop there.
Correct. Yeah.
So if it misses the mark, then why did it miss the mark? And then you kind of keep responding. And I think that pushing forward is sort of where the nuggets of those gold nuggets are.
And it's so interesting, right? Because inherently as a creator, you do that with your content. It's like you create something and then you see the response to it, and that's the conversation.
100%.
But I'm sure that like a lot of creators that release product don't think about their product in the same way. And maybe it's because it's like a licensing deal or a collaborate. Like maybe it's in the structure of the business where they don't actually have that much say over the product. But like that's how creators should treat their product as well. It's like, okay, I'm going to do like a short run limited release, and I'm going to listen, and then I'm going to respond. And it's funny because this is what the tech industry does really well, is like they create a feature and then they take a small subset of users and they give only those users that feature, and they listen and they pay attention to how that thing is being used and what people are saying about it. It's not a focus group. It's like, okay, this product is now in the wild and we are trying to learn and understand and be a part of that. All the tech products we use are a conversation with us all the time. And I think it's a funny one because people don't think about it like that. But I think creators can do that with their physical product as well, because they have that relationship.
And I think the downfall, where people stumble, because I think it's all well and good to be like, all right, for example, if I'm creating a look and I create a look and I'm like, all right, this is the idea I have. I want to use these colors because X, Y, and Z is trending right now. It goes out there and it flops and it doesn't perform well. It's easy for me to be like, okay, tomorrow we're going to do this instead.
Right.
But with a product or a service or something that takes a little bit more time, there's so much risk involved that you don't want to do it again.
When you say risk, you mean like financial risk or opportunity cost, like time risk?
I feel like the risk in every department. So financial risk. So if something flops, you want to do it again, that's going to be more money, or you have to go back to the drawing board and back to R&D to figure out what step in the process we can improve. And it's that's what I mean,
I think
I'm like, I don't know what else is going to.
I think that's an interesting conversation to talk about the risk, because I think that the deal that influencers and creators have with brands is a bum deal, right? And sorry, brands, but it's like, you know, an influencer builds this community, a creator builds this community, and then an influencer comes along, a brand comes along and has to effectively leverage that influencer community. They'll pay for a post. Like, I don't care how much it is. Like, if it's $100 or 10 grand for a post, if the brand does a good job, they are effectively buying access to this community that, the creator has crafted. And if they do a good job, they get the long tail of value realized from that. They will convert that audience into sales. And if they do a good job, repeat sales. And then they've got that is a part, that person is now a part of their community. And they can continue to communicate and continue to market. And then the influencer, the creator, is just like, okay, I have, that transaction is over and I've got my money, but I don't have, like, there's no way to continue to realize value. They might hire you again, but it's a one-off transaction and that brand continues to reap that value. And it's not a good deal for influencers, because you have like creators have this this brand equity that they've built, and they won't be popular forever. And you've got a moment, really, like a moment.
Such a small window.
Yeah, a moment to transfer that community equity into a brand that can live beyond the success of the creator. And so, like, we say, yeah, okay, it's a risk to do product, but what's the bigger risk? Is the bigger risk to get to the end of a 10-year, public career as a creator, and all of a sudden you don't have any money left because of the lifestyle? It's like the same. It's the plight of the professional athlete. It's like your candle burns bright, but it burns bright for 10 or 15 years. Yeah. And then what? You're like a commentator, or,
Where next?
Like, no shade on the athletes out there. I'm sure you all figure it out. But, it's like, I think it's like, creators, I would see the risk the other way. I think that it's daunting because maybe you've never done it before, but if you can solve those problems, actually, I look at it as a no-brainer. It's like, okay, yeah, you really should be. I don't care what it is. Like, it doesn't have to be physical product. It can be, anything you're doing can be like, workout videos, or, I don't know. There's any
as a creator, it runs deep. Like, it's not just, you've built this for so long that you have that expertise, whether you know it or not, that you can, like, that can evolve into whatever you want it to be. So I always say that, like, as I built my brand, as I built my Rowi Singh brand, I feel like I can inject that into whatever I do. So if I did a brand of, like, homewares, it'll be very within my style, and it would make sense because I can carry that creator, that creativity, that brand that I've built, and I can sort of put it wherever I'm passionate.
Right.
Whether it's skincare, like whatever it is. And I think that is, again, the creator's advantage.
Right.
And the whole economy of it all is that we have built this brand that is so unique to us, so unique to Rowi, that I can take it somewhere and it will be successful because people have bought into that already.
Right. And also, like, risk is relative. Like, when you started creating, your content,
that's a risk. Everything.
And it would have felt like a risk, right? You're like, oh my God, I've got to put this out into the world. Like, what is everyone going to think? Like, I don't know how self-conscious you were about it. I'd be
hugely
terrified
I
about it.
I got like random, when I first started, because it was just a strange thing to do, to post. People were posting food on Instagram, and I was out here like posting selfies, but like having fun with it. And I got all these like anonymous messages when Tumblr was a thing, of people just being like, why are you posting pictures of yourself? Like, do you even have any friends? And it was like, people, it was new to, literally, it was a bit jarring, but it was new to people, and it was also new to me. But I trusted that I knew this was going to go, I knew where I was going to take this, and it wasn't just like a selfie on the internet.
Right.
Yeah. The dumpster fire that it's been on my mind is, Daniel Bernstein. Daniel Bernstein of Who What Wear. She's like a influencer blogger who started like it was like a site, right? Like, she had this like fashion site where she would blog, and she was just like one of the first influencers, I'd say. And then she started her own brand, and she had a massive following. She still has a massive following. And she just started to rip off smaller creators and just a series of unfortunate events, like in the influencer sphere. And then she just lost her credibility because she would just do it over and over and over again. And her end goal, you could just see that her goal was just like money making, and she kind of lost sight of like why she was doing it. And then the reason why I brought it up is because she recently just joined TikTok, And it was so funny because she's like,
I love how much this tickles you, by the way.
it's like she joins TikTok and then she creates this TikTok. She's like, "Hi, my name's Danielle and I started this fashion brand." And she just missed the mark, and all the comments are like, "No, honey, no. Like we know you've ripped off brands. Like this, we're not here. Like don't come to this space." And I just find it really interesting because she just, I think, classic example of someone who refuses to listen and is kind of like blocked out, like, I guess like blocked out everything but like her goal of like making money and producing more. So it's very interesting to me to see her kind of just still pushing forward but just not listening really to audience at all.
I mean, I think that is an interesting, I've like seen that a little bit. You sent me something the other day.
Yeah,
and
I literally just sent you the TikTok.
Yes,
and I was
I
like,
read the comments and I was just like, oh, like
it was
wow.
just like, no,
yes,
like not here. Don't come
and I
here.
think it's important to note that it's okay to fuck up.
Yeah, 100%.
But you need to, like, this is I think a part of maintaining integrity within your community. Like you're almost lucky. Like a brand can't really fuck up because you have that expectation of a brand that, okay, you do have lines of approvals to go through. You do, you should never do that. But if it's a person, it's like, people make mistakes, and community, like creator-led communities, the creators probably have a little bit more tolerance from the community to make a mistake, as long as you make the mistake with integrity, right?
Yeah, and like recognize that mistake. People, that's all people want.
Have you blown it once before?
Oh, 100%, many times. Well, not like on a massive scale, but I've said something that probably was controversial or didn't sit well with a particular community, was offensive, and that was just checking myself because I wouldn't have known if someone didn't pull me up on it.
Right.
And sometimes it's a little bit, sometimes people just want to attack you for the sake of attacking you, so you have to kind of use your own sort of judgment as to whether this is something that you have done or people are just reacting.
Right.
And you know your audience, so you know whether it's something that you need to like check yourself on. And there's many times where I've been like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I didn't think about this community in particular. But every single time, like, I need to recognize that, and I will go public and be like, that was my bad. But I've learned, and I think that's important. But people are like, thank you for owning up to it.
Right.
Yeah. I try to.
Yeah.
I try to not let my ego get the better of me. Sometimes I'm like, well, you're wrong. You're just wrong. And so it's difficult, and I understand why it is difficult because you're still trying to maintain your authority as a creator.
Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Rate, review, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode.
If you're keen to talk product, slide into my DMs.
And if you want to talk all things creator, hit me up. Links in the show notes, and see you next week.
Yo, wait a minute. I'ma let you finish. But it's a creator's world. It's one of the best podcasts of all time.